Welcome to the AKA Fitness Connect show. I'm your host, Amy King. Join us in this podcast series as we interview successful coaches from a wide array of health and fitness and wellness disciplines, as well as pros and amateur athletes or just fitness enthusiasts of all shapes and sizes. Here, we'll share valuable content to enhance your mindset, life and nutrition, all to help you along your epic personal health and fitness journey. All right, welcome to another episode of AKA Fitness Connect. So for those who are new to the podcast or Zoomcast, whichever one you're catching, the whole point of this session or these podcasts is to introduce you to different fitness professionals or people on their own athletic journeys or other people within the fitness community to share their journeys and insights. Also, we also have other PTs. So Rochelle's also a PT as well. So get you to learn a little bit more, see if you resonate with them, and get to know them in case you want to reach out and seek some help for your own fitness journey. So without any further ado, I have the lovely Rochelle Firth with me, who is now a second-time competitor in bodybuilding, which we'll talk about. But Rochelle also, as I mentioned, is a PT, but she also works outside of the fitness industry as well. So she likes to have a lot on her plate, as well as, has taken up bodybuilding for better or worse and hasn't looked back. So we're going to talk a little bit around Rochelle's journey, because it's been one that's overcome quite a few challenges, and she's done what a lot of people haven't been able to do. So hopefully you'll draw some inspiration and insights from that. So without any further ado, Rochelle, would you like to maybe introduce yourself a little bit and where you PT out of, and then I'll ask you some targeted questions.
Easy. So I'm Rochelle. I PT out of Vigor Gym in Maddington, so little bodybuilding gym. Vigor Gym in Maddington, which is brilliant little gym. Love that place. Good community. Really, really good beliefs and sort of ideas around training. Lots of different cultures and different sort of people. So it's a really great place. Melting pot of people, which is really fun. So I've been training out of there for a couple of years under you.
So yes, Rochelle is actually one of my clients, but also a friend, and well, just all round great human being. But anyway, I think that'll shine through when we go through this. Rochelle, you've had a pretty interesting fitness journey, sort of long before you engaged a coach. So let's talk a little bit about that, and then some of the reasons why you decided to get a coach. So do you want to take us back to when it all first started for you, and what was the catalyst that led to your current trajectory?
Yeah, absolutely. So very long story, but to condense it, I grew up in a family that probably wasn't that health conscious. Country family on my mum's side. I've got a split family who like to show their love in cake and treats, and a dad who is workaholic, smoker, drinker, all that side of things, and wasn't really into the healthy eating or cooking side of things. Love them, but just that wasn't a big part of our lives. So I grew up generally on the heavier side. My mum's side of the family always had sort of issues of their own around their weight, which I think definitely impacted me as a young girl, I think looking back now, growing up, I can see that influence, whereas growing up, you don't really realize it. But I was very conscious about my weight, my size. I'm a tall girl, so I used to take up a lot more space than a lot of the other girls too, which definitely made me sort of a lot more conscious of how I took up space in the world. From there, I guess I always sort of was conscious and worried about how I looked or my body image. Getting older, I moved back and forth between parents a lot. Had a lot of time to myself, and so made a lot of bad food choices as well, because I wasn't really taught the ideas about nutrition or why. I guess I used food as a comfort, especially because I was alone a lot growing up.
Yeah.
Then I got a bit older, started being more interested in, I guess, the nutrition side of things, and started doing the dangerous thing of teaching myself. Changed my diet a lot. And sort of started at the gym, but it was very on again, off again. So my current partner actually took me to the gym the first time. I walked out, smoked a cigarette, vomited, cried, told him I will never do that again. I can't believe you made me do this. And now I PT and bodybuild. So,
Right. But hang on, before we go any further, so
yeah.
there's a lot to unpack there. So
Right.
um, let's just go back a little bit further. So when you were younger, I guess, what were some of the attitudes around food? And I think this is a really important thing, right? Like, because you didn't know any better, but that was just that was your normal, right? Because the people in your world,
Yeah.
circle, had certain attitudes around foods. And
Yeah.
when, I guess, what were some of those attitudes? And then when did you start to realize that perhaps what you thought was true wasn't, or that there was another way to look at things?
Yeah, cool. I guess the attitudes that were around was, for want of a better term, that the idea that being fat or a certain type of body type was bad and inherently you were a bad person for looking a certain way. The idea that, not that my family was very fit, so it was kind of this juxtaposition. The idea, so this was on one side of the family, almost shaming around it, being made to weigh in front of the family, things like that, because that would give you the response to make you make changes. Although that's the people that were serving me the food I was eating as well, so it was a bit funny. On the other side of the family, it was almost nothing. So it was very much like, yeah, whatever, eat whatever. Like they were quite lean and active on that side of the family. So it's like, yeah, whatever, like you'll be fine. Just eat less if you don't want to be as big, or just, it's easy, just put less in your mouth. Which I think for me started changing probably. I was always interested in good food and I always was attracted to healthy food. But I think when I started realizing that it was actually my decision what I got to eat, and what made me feel good or bad started happening more in my 20s, maybe even mid 20s, because I was a bit more conscious. I wasn't partying anymore, going out drinking, things like that. So I wasn't feeling so, I was more in tune with my body and how things were feeling for me. And then I guess towards my late 20s, when I did my PT course, is when I started to realize that what I knew, I actually needed more information and needed to learn from people who knew what they were talking about, which is when I started looking into coaching and someone who knew more about nutrition than I did, so I could learn from them.
Yeah. And then, so when you started doing stuff in your 20s as well, you said you started and tried a few things. So what do you think, and we've talked we'll unpack it a little bit as well. Like your whole relationship with food has changed over the last couple of years, but you were already on a journey in terms of your relationship with food. So when you were growing up as well, was the attitudes with your family that you were just eating too much, or did they sort of shame you as well for being too lazy, for not being active enough, or what was the kind of main messaging that came through?
I think a little bit of both. Food wise, I mean, we were served food. So you ate what was on your plate, you finish your plate. That was sort of the rules. But then if you ate too much, it was like, not at the time, but later on, it's like, oh, well, that's your problem because you've been eating too much.
Okay.
It's a really funny paradigm there, because I think it was really from, like my mum's mum, and then and it sort of is generational. I can also see it in her sisters sometimes as well. So I definitely got the feeling that they were sort of raised the same way, in this idea that, you look a certain way, you are a certain type of person, and you need to present yourself a certain way to the world. I think that's where the attitude,
how you looked rather than how you felt, and then it was always your fault and then you were kind of denied love and attention or validation. You didn't look.
And then the ideas around what healthy was, I think, as well, were a bit misled. So although I think we were eating what we thought was very nutrient dense food, it wasn't bad food, but it probably wasn't the right choices, or we could have been making better choices in a lot of things. And that just comes down, I think, to a lack of education as well. So that's where I'm sort of passionate about it now, is teaching or explaining this to other people, because I had that very much mentality of, less means less food, restrict, being sad, being, you must be doing it right if you're hungry all the time, or if you're looking, you're constantly craving certain foods, and replacing things with healthy versions of the same things, which I now know aren't necessarily the best options, and that you can eat food. Like you don't need to replace things with shakes and bars and this and that, and things that say healthy on them don't necessarily equate to health or nutrition. So
Yeah, okay.
it's been a big learning curve for me, definitely, because I definitely went through all the diets, all the fads, all the TikTok workout sort of things that were around in my day. So yeah, we went through all that until I realized that, maybe it was actually worth speaking to someone who knew what they were talking about and learning
Yeah,
rather
okay.
than
So
what
you
was.
tried just about every diet. So, and then did you do like periods of where you kind of did it all or nothing and then binged or, all right. Yeah, okay. So,
Absolutely. After the restriction always comes a massive binge session. So
okay.
yeah,
And then
definitely like,
what happened with your weight when you did all that?
yeah, so my weight went up and down over the years, so it sort of fluctuated. So there was times where I was much lighter. There was times that I got to really heavy points. So I was almost close to 100 kilos. I stopped weighing myself when I got to that weight. But the last time I weighed myself at a heavy weight, I think I was well into the 90s. So it wasn't until I saw a picture of myself and I went, yeah, no, you know what? Something's got to change. But I notice as well now, knowing what I know about body, is that although my weight changed, my body composition wasn't necessarily what I was looking for. So I had this number in my head of this is what's going to make me happy. I'll look like this when I get to X kilos,
Yes.
and then I'd get there, wouldn't look that way, and think, oh, I need to drop the number. So it was this constant thing of trying to get skinnier or smaller. And not actually understanding how the body responds to different food, different training, things like that.
Yeah, so because when you first came to me, which would have been 2 years ago now, oh no, 3 years ago almost.
Yeah, actually, far out. It's gone
Yeah,
quickly.
so it's gone. But I think what you were around, close to 80 kilos there, but not eating
Yeah,
very much, tired all the time, not feeling great.
yeah,
You're
absolutely.
kind of enthusiastic though, because you finished your PT course.
I
Yeah. Okay. So what was it? So what made you do the PT course?
think I'm definitely someone who likes to be in control of things, and I'd gotten the gym bug, but I didn't really know what I was doing. And being that type A personality, I was like, well, I'm not going to listen to everyone else. I need to understand it and know it so that I know I'm doing the exact right thing. So because I was getting really interested in it, and also my work, I wanted something a little bit more challenging. I thought, oh, well, I'll try this out. And for me, I never thought I was going to work in PT. I thought it was just a way for me to learn these skills and then apply them so that I wouldn't necessarily need a coach. I could just do my own programming because I wasn't necessarily thinking I was going to get into the athletic side of things. I was more just wanting to understand what I was doing and make sure I wasn't doing things stupid or doing things the most effective way that I could.
Yeah.
And then from there, that snowballed because as I learned more, I realized how much more there was to learn and how many awesome people there were out there to teach me as well, which I have found really important part of it, the
Yeah.
community side.
Yeah.
So
And how long
yeah,
have you
so
been
that's us.
training? How long have you been training before you started doing the PT course?
So I'd been training probably solidly for maybe 6 to 12 months, but before that it had been,
Intermittent.
and when I say training, what I thought was training. um, but before that it was very intermittent. I'd go really, really hardcore. Same with the diet. So really,
All or
really
nothing.
extreme for a while and then nothing. Go, oh, it's not doing what I want it to do. It's obviously like I'm not doing the right thing. What's the point?
Yeah.
And then I'd go, oh, I do miss the gym. so so it was this very roller coaster sort
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then suddenly at one point you started to get the bug, started to get a little bit of results, and then you could do more. Okay. And then what is it that piqued your interest about bodybuilding?
So I had admired bodybuilders for a very long time. Funny story, about 10 years ago, when I first started at the gym, the first time I'd been, I decided, oh, I'm going to do it. And I looked up on bodybuilding.com what a bodybuilder ate and what they did and printed it out, made all the food, which was a ridiculous amount of food for me at the time, all whole foods, had a fridge full at work of food and ate so much I threw up, which has never happened to me before. I can normally eat like a Labrador. So I was physically making myself sick just trying to force this food down. And I was like, this is ridiculous. I don't know what I'm doing. So sort of fell off the bandwagon with that, but always was following people on Instagram or was interested in it. But I found it a really difficult sport because it's so niche to actually find people and connect with people
Yeah.
or to because I hadn't been in that gym environment yet either. So I didn't really have connections. So I found it sort of a difficult sport to learn much about online, or that it's not like it's something that's televised. So I sort of was interested in it. But then once I got into my PT course, I had a really awesome tutor who was sort of sitting down, we were discussing goals one day, and I had to throw away, oh, I'd love to do a bodybuilding comp once because it's starting to get more popular. I'd seen it more often, and thought, oh, that'd be cool to do one day in like 10 years, you know. And he basically said at the end of my course, sat me down and said, if you're serious about this, well, I can connect you with the right people. Do it properly. Don't find someone that's just going to sort of run you through a prep really quickly, run you down, and then just flick you off. And then from there, he got me in contact with people like yourself. And I got brought into the community, started to learn a lot more, got more interested in it, got more excited about it, did a year of building with you, and then went into our first prep, which was really cool. Did a show, and I must have liked it somewhat because we did it again. So, and hopefully will again. So,
that's it.
And so it's been a long but short journey.
And this is the thing. So and I think that's really important, right? Like I think you've touched on a few things there. There's plenty of people who think they could take people through a comp prep and do that and spit them out. And you'll see a lot of people who maybe do one comp or two comps and then they're done, and then maybe they've got metabolic damage and then they end up worse than they ever did before doing a bodybuilding competition. So anyway, you had an idea of doing a bodybuilding competition. And the journey, though, was a lot different to anything that you'd ever imagined, right? So why don't we cast back and go through like some of the things that you reflect back on now around what you know now but you didn't know then, you know, what you found the challenging part, what you loved about it, that sort of stuff. So so it doesn't matter where you start or what you focus on, because we can always drive it back to different things. There's a lot to unpack in this couple of years journey. It's been a massive learning curve for you. So so take it away.
So okay, probably not enough to fit in one podcast, I've learned in the last couple of years. But I think the biggest thing for me is the thing that I thought the least about getting into this, which was the way that it's affected my mindset and the way I view myself, the way I view exercise, food, the whole lot of things. I definitely didn't have a lot of confidence in myself before I started with you. I know I have certain skills and things like that, but I didn't necessarily have the confidence to actually go, no, I can do that. I'm going to do it. It's hard, but I can do it anyway. Bodybuilding has taught me that one, that even though things are hard, you can still do them, and just to give things a crack. So it's been really, really good for me in terms of just taking on opportunities that in the past I probably would have bowed out of, and not because of a lack of skill, but more because of a lack of confidence in myself. So that's been a really, really exciting thing for me. I feel like my work's improved. I feel like my boundaries in relationships have improved. Obviously, my training's improved, my food's improved, but that's almost the back end of the whole experience. Look, in prep and towards the end of it, it's obviously a very main focus, but I find that most of the lessons I've learned from bodybuilding have actually had much bigger influence on my world outside of bodybuilding. So the mindset one's been a really, really big one for me. Also, food, relationship with food. So understanding nutrition a bit more. Also understanding that eating's not bad, because I think I got to a point in my journey where I sort of equate, if I'm eating, then I'm doing the wrong thing because I'm trying to lose weight, which isn't the right way of looking at it. It's not reward. And I think that's where also my binging came from, because I was using that as a reward for, I've done all this, so now I deserve a treat. Whereas now I'm like, if I want a treat, I can have a treat. But I don't, how's it going to make me feel? Do I actually want that? And it's not that I sit there and go, most of the time I'm like, I don't even want it anymore. It's not interesting to me. But yeah, it's done a lot. And I feel like every week, month, I find these little new things in my brain where I go, Oh, I know where that came from because
Yeah,
it's a culmination of a small series of events that sort of culminate over time, and you start to realize that you've built resilience, you've built confidence, you've built all these sort of skill sets that you haven't even realized, but it's just chipping away at them over time.
yeah,
Um, and I think where bodybuilding has done that for me is that it's not a short process. It's something that you've got to be committed to. So
yeah,
it's made me realize that I can commit to something and follow it through.
yeah.
And that really, if you want something, if you put the work in, you will get there. Also taught me, big one from the first competition, not to worry so much about results, and learning about things like goals with you rather than going for a particular result, going for things that you can control. So worrying more about
Mastery rather
things
than
that, yeah,
performance,
exactly,
and
exactly right.
focusing on the behaviors and the skills rather than the actual outcomes,
Yeah,
and then enjoying that process. So
that,
so if I just recap, so your relationship with food, but also your relationship with training has changed, right? So you feel much more connected in what you're doing. You enjoy it for
yeah.
what it is. It's not a punishment or a weight loss tool. It's a tool that enhances you, right? Like to
Yeah,
perform optimally in other things. And then
absolutely.
so we
A
spent a
happy
lot of
place.
time before you even got on stage doing some foundational stuff. So what were some of the foundational habits that really stood out for you during that time? I mean, I know that the relationship with food and improved training was obviously a byproduct of that, but what were some of the foundational things that you think that really helped, shift the paradigm for you?
Yeah, I think first of all, having someone to be accountable to was a really good start because I had to call myself out on my own BS basically. There was no more excuses and things like that. It was like there's someone that you can talk to and get a very clear answer from. But foundationally, I think it was just setting the really basic things up, things like that you don't necessarily think about all the time, but how's your sleep? Because sleep's going to affect how you eat. It's going to affect your emotions. It's going to affect how you are at work, how you are everywhere. Also, it's going to affect your recovery. Uh, Food obviously was a big one. Learning more about. I used to eat a lot of shakes, protein bars, things like that. Learning to use real food to get nutrition, which makes me feel a lot better as well. And the basics of what real food and good food actually is. Learning that carbs aren't the devil, things like that. The other one that really got me was things like water. Like I didn't realize how little water I actually drank, and when I started drinking, like it sounds so simple, but when I started actually drinking regular amounts of water on a regular basis, I just felt a lot better, and all those other things improved. A lot of the time, I think when I thought I was hungry, I was just thirsty. Um, then I I think for me as well, setting up a routine. So having for me again, being very type A, having a set meal plan to follow was really, really good for me because it took all the guesswork out of it.
Mm,
And that it also takes that decision fatigue out. So not
yeah,
coming up every morning and going, oh, how am I going to fit this into my macros? Or, oh, if I do this, then I can have this later. I can sneak this in and sort of trying to fit things around rather than or trying to sort of cheat the system rather than just go, this is how you're going to get to your goal. Here's your roadmap, follow it. And it just takes a whole nother stress out of the day that I don't need
yeah.
to
It
worry
gives you
about.
some bandwidth, right? Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
So I think just the really simple things were really the most important for me.
yeah,
To actually strip it all back and go, yeah, you can do these crazy exercises, you can do these crazy workouts or these insane diets, but in the end, is that sustainable? And what are the things that are going to create a healthy foundation that you can then do what you want from there. So
mm,
whether you want to be an athlete, whether you want to bodybuild, whether you want to just be a generally healthy person, you need those sort of foundations in
yeah,
place. Otherwise, everything else is by the by. You can't sustain them if you don't have those
yeah,
basics in. So that was really important for me to bring it back to the simple things rather than get caught up in, oh, am I doing the right rep range? Or like things
yeah,
like that really irrelevant if the rest isn't there.
yeah,
So
exactly.
that was
So
important.
focusing on the right things first and getting the foundations in. And then we obviously cranked that into overdrive when we got into prep. So,
Yeah.
what were some of the things that you found challenging, but then also rewarding when you first did that first prep, right? Because,
Yeah.
the training obviously went up, the cardio went
Yeah.
up, the food went down, so, well, what was and there was a lot to juggle, a lot to learn. So, what were and then the posing, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
So,
the posing.
yeah. All right. So what, so you had all these so we got the foundational stuff done. We'd spent a good 6 months doing that. And then suddenly you found yourself in prep land.
Yeah.
Did you expect because obviously you had an idea about bodybuilding, but did you have an idea around what was actually involved in that? And then what did you find like, oh my God, I had no idea about this, and it took up a lot more time than what you expected?
Yeah. I think there was some interesting things, well, things that I had ideas of what bodybuilding was, and then in reality were very different. So things like the diet, I thought I was going to be eating chicken and rice 3 times a day and like a protein shake, like when I first, and yeah, it's not that. I found the training really, really intense. It definitely kicks up. For me, I think the hardest part of the whole thing is not so much the commitment, because I'd already decided I was doing this regardless. And I think if you don't have that, then a prep's not something to go into.
No, you can't do it
But
half-ass.
nah, it's you've got to be all or nothing.
Yeah.
But I think the fatigue is probably the thing that hit me
Yes.
the most. I knew it was going to be hard, but I thought, oh yeah, you're going to be hungry. I wasn't actually as hungry as I thought I was going to be. I thought I was going to be feel like I was starving all the time and this and that. It was more just trying to fit so much into a day, and then still trying to recover at the same
Yeah.
time, and then do it all again the next day, knowing you still got another 4 months left of it. I
Yeah.
mean, the first prep, the start is very exciting because everything's new. In fact, the whole prep's very exciting, but it's also very daunting because you don't really know what to expect or how you're going to come up, and you've got
Yeah.
expectations in your head. I think I was saying this to you the other day, but you see all these Instagram, everyone that you're looking at is the best in their field. It's like looking at the best AFL player like Gary Ablett and going, oh, I've played football for a year, I should be as good as him. And you're like, it doesn't work like that. So learning that it is a process. It's not
Yeah.
just something that you wake up the next day and you look, shredded.
Yeah.
Learning that being lean isn't necessarily a fun thing.
Yeah.
So the idea of, oh, I'm going to go to the beach and I'm going to do this, I was like, I'm going to sleep whatever second I get. But yeah, the posing was definitely an experience. So I wouldn't call myself the most graceful person.
Well, you
I'm
are
a bit of
now.
a klutz.
Did you see your last posing?
But it was definitely a learning curve. So
You love posing now, though, don't you? Yeah.
but it's one of those things I think you look at and they make it look so easy and you sort of go, oh yeah, cool. And then you try and do something like that and you think,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, where's my arm? Suck my gut in. Oh no, this needs to go here and that needs to flex and this needs to come in. But
Yeah.
it's very fun at the same
Yeah.
time because you get to see your reward for all that hard work. So every week you start to see changes.
Yeah.
The I think for me as well, it was less so seeing the change, but seeing that I was actually committed to it and I was following through with it and I was able to do that.
Yeah.
That was cool. And to prove to myself I could do it.
Yeah.
The thing I think I found hardest about prep, which you might agree with me, is actually not the prep, it's the reversing out
Yes. Yeah.
of the show. So
But you
I
found this one
think,
a lot easier, right? Than this time.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I knew what was coming, so it was a little bit easier to prepare mentally for it. But I think that first one, and everyone warns you, but you don't really understand until you go through it. Once that show day idea and the bright lights are all gone, the idea that we all go out and eat, 6 liters of ice cream and 50 cookies and stuff is not really how it works.
And you shouldn't be doing that.
Not something that you want to do.
Yeah.
So I think you have this idea and you're, oh, I'm going to do that. And then I can do whatever I want afterwards because I've got the body and that's it. And you realize very quickly that actually, no, like, you've got to do things to maintain that if you want to maintain that. Obviously, stage lean isn't something you can maintain long term. And that's another thing is realizing that bodybuilding is a sport where with on and off seasons and you can't stay looking like people doing their stage pictures 24/7 365. It's just not physically, well, there might be elite few, but in general it's not sustainable, and it's something that was really, really healthy for me to be comfortable with learning to want to see the scale go up rather than just constantly being obsessed with getting smaller. So
Yeah.
it was hard, but it was a really, really good thing for me, the first, especially the first reverse, I think, to get on the scale and be like, oh yes, oh, I'm going up, or oh, I'm getting bigger and stronger, not relating it to, oh no, you're blowing out, or oh no, you're undoing all this hard work or anything
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
So it's a bit mentally frying, but it's part of the sport, and it's one of the challenges that I actually really like, because it's made me really appreciate my body for what it can do, not just what it looks like. I
Yeah.
think bodybuilding gets a really bad rap for being vain, or having this idea that, oh, they just care about what they look like. And I think you'll find anyone or everyone that I've met that's actually been in the sport for a period of time, not just for a comp, definitely actually has a much healthier view of their body, and understanding that, there's different seasons for different things. And
Yeah.
sometimes
It's,
we need to,
it's
focus on strength. Sometimes we're focusing on getting lean, but it's not always about how we look,
yeah.
which
And
is
actually, if you get down to the core of it, bodybuilding is actually less about the body,
yeah,
ironically, even though it
yeah,
is about the body. It's actually
yeah,
not. It's actually about breaking through perceived limitations. It's
yeah,
about seeing how far you can push the body. It's about you being the creator and creating a physique.
yeah,
It's about you getting past your own mental barriers or figuring out the next level for you. So how do you progress, and how do you get better at something, and what can you improve on? So it's that constant, how do I get more, how do I do more, how do I be more, and kind of challenging on that one. So yeah, it's interesting, right? And then when you look at it at its basis or at its core, you look at any kind of elite athlete, and that's kind of the mentality that they have. So it's really, if anything, it's a lesson in resilience more than anything else, right?
absolutely,
Mm.
definitely. There's that is definitely something I've learned through this journey. It's a big skill, and it's in different ways as well, which is where I found, yeah, the sport is a really interesting sport, in that, because so much of it is the mental side of things. And I'm probably starting to realize that all sport probably is. But being so extreme, and then also a very solo sport, even though you've got a team of coaches and, supporters around you, it really comes down to, have you done what you need to do today? No one else can do it for you. You can't rely on someone if you're not feeling that great today. You've just got to get up and get it done. So I think it's really, really good for building that resilience muscle, that's for sure.
Yeah. And also the most rewarding, right? Because you kind of
Oh,
push through what you think you can do. Yeah. And then,
absolutely. And it comes down to you doing the work, which
so when
is
you went in, like, even though you kind of like, we did a lot of work around expectations and so on, and you obviously had a lot better expectations coming into the second one. But, you know, when you first did the first one, right, you said, like it was almost like, you kind of expected to have abs or to look like an
yeah,
Instagram person, right? And then, obviously you came in the shape of your life in the first comp.
yeah,
But that was your first comp, and in terms of training years, you're very
baby.
much a baby in the sport, right?
Yeah.
And so how was, in a sense, that crushing, realization when you got in and you presented the best that you had, and
Yeah.
then you didn't get the outcome that you wanted, which was potentially, an external reward
Yeah.
for, or external credit for that, right? And she, just for the record for the audience as well, she did actually still win a third place, two third places.
I think so. Yeah, I think
No,
so.
a second and a
No,
third.
second and a third. Yeah.
Yeah, a second and third.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's still actually placed, which is pretty hard to do in your first competitions. So placed second and third. Didn't quite walk away with the result that you were expecting, and then obviously dealing with the aftermath of that. So tell us about what that did, and how that was for you.
Yeah. So at the time, I was pretty upset. I think, like, state show day is a big day. It's been a big few months and stuff, and so there's a lot of emotion that goes into it. You're tired, you're thirsty, you're hungry. It's a big day. But I was definitely crushed when I first got off stage, because I sort of thought, I don't know how I could have put in any more to do any better. And it took a few
And
conversations
yeah,
and a bit of time, like, not that it took ages, but a week or so of just reflecting on what I actually achieved and done, and to realize that that was the win for me. In the end, you can't control who, especially in a sport like bodybuilding, is very subjective, and especially in something like bikini, you can't control who's there on the day, how it's judged. But also, it definitely taught me that, for me, having that sort of expectation and then reality was a good thing, because it taught me that really what I need to focus on is me and not what everyone else is doing, because I can't control any of it.
Yeah.
So I can't control if I could have the most genetically blessed person in the planet who's been training for 30 years rock up on the day and do their first competition.
Yeah.
You can't control it. Like, it's just how it is. And it's a hard sport and it's a brutal sport. And I think the quicker you learn that, probably the better.
Well, I
to an
think there's
extent.
also another piece, right? And I
Mm,
think there's a lot of things around bodybuilding that reflect other life, and we kind of put it out in
yeah.
steps. Like, right, we literally, actually go out in basically not much more than sparkly tooth floss, right, and bear it
Yeah.
out, and we do the opposite to what society expects. We're like, please judge my body,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
It's a very weird thing to do in the first place, right? But the second piece of that, right, is the reality is, right, nobody cares whether you've done your stuff or not.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
They don't see that. Everybody is looking to see what that end result is and that success is. But at the end of the day, you're the one that has to be with you. You're like, if
Yeah.
you've done absolutely, and to be honest, there was nothing else you could have done at that point. You did everything you were supposed
Yeah.
to. You followed the plan
Exactly.
to the T. You did the absolute best that you could, and you got in
Yeah.
the shape of your life as a result of that. The rest was
Exactly.
outside of your control. So that's the thing. I think that's another lesson, right? Like, you're the one that needs to be comfortable with the effort that you've put in so that you can sleep at night knowing that you've done the very best that you can.
Yeah.
Sometimes it'll be recognized by others, but most of the time it won't. But at the end of the day, you're the only one that matters in terms of that recognition, if that makes sense. So, and of course, anyone that loves you would have been damn proud of you anyway. So, and did you find that as well? Is that when, you actually got up on stage and did that for yourself, that other people started to come in and act like they were always in your back corner?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's funny. Everyone wants to be your best friend in the last week of prep when you
Yeah.
don't have any time to be their best friend.
Yeah.
But it's funny how when you look shredded, everyone wants to be around you. But no, I definitely found that, and I definitely found that. Yeah, refocusing what my goals were rather than about what number someone decided to give me on a day based on a ranking, and more focusing on what I'd done and whether I was happy, like exactly how you say, like you're the one that's got to sit with it in the end. And if I think there'd probably be a lot of people who'd get up there and go, oh, you know what, this isn't for me.
Yeah.
And that's totally fine as well. I don't think it's for everyone. I think it's pretty hardcore sport, and that's fine. Like, that's a great part of it, is that it is a challenge and it's really difficult, and you are going against the norm. That idea of, I mean, I was very overweight. I've always been very conscious about how I look. So really, for me, the win was being in a bikini. One, because I don't normally show that much skin, getting up on stage and doing the damn thing, but also, like you say, doing all those things and knowing in myself I'd done everything I could. I think for me, it was more just a reality check of, hey, you're not the only person who's done everything that they
Yeah.
need to do as well.
Exactly.
And at some point, we've got to be ranked. So
Yeah.
it was good for me, especially going into my next comp, because I think I had more, not realistic expectations, but I focused a lot less on
Well, you got
I
some.
want to win,
Yeah.
and more on I want to do my best and enjoy it. And you put that work in and actually experience the day, not just be sort of a deer in the headlights the whole time. So I definitely had a much, not that I didn't enjoy my first comp, but I definitely enjoyed my second one a lot more. I was able to appreciate it more for what it was.
Yeah. So you
Then
started to build a healthier relationship with yourself as well, right? Because your self-worth then didn't become a number either on the scales or a number that
yeah,
gave you in terms of a placing, right?
exactly right.
Okay, so that's interesting. So yeah, because you go to a pretty dark place after comp, right? Because you've done all this
Yeah.
extra work, you've basically had blinkers on, and there's been
Mm-hmm.
a lot of focus, almost to the detriment of everything else, right? A lot of people will just go, really, really deep into bodybuilding, and then everything else kind of gets like
Yeah,
displaced around it, right?
yeah,
And what a lot of people don't do is have goals on afterwards. So we obviously worked on that post comp, And then we established some of those goals and obviously smashed some of those in the off season. So for you, yeah, how important was that goal setting, post comp to get you through that? And what were there anything else like post comp that really helped you get through that move past it and then, come back stronger for it, I guess?
Yeah, I think having a coach through post comp is really important. That would be my number one. Having someone who's been through it and can understand where you're at, and also to give you that support through that time was really, really important for me, because I think a lot of people will do a prep and then finish with their coach, and that's really the time that you need that. You can, I think people call it post comp blues, but you can sort of, because you've been so focused on something and all the glitz and glamour's gone, and it's like, oh, now what? Not having that structure around can be really difficult, especially because even with it set up the best way possible, it's hard because your life is changing quite significantly very quickly.
Yeah.
And then, so there was that, but I think the goal setting that we sat down and did was really important as well, to actually remember that there's other parts to you other than just the athlete side. And while that's important, like you say, especially with something like bodybuilding, and especially towards the end, there is only so many hours in the day, and sometimes things have to take a back seat to that. And
Yeah.
sometimes that can be things like relationships. Well, actually, for me, often it is because I work a lot, so
Yeah.
my work can't change. I can't juggle that. That's just, they're set in time. So I don't see my partner very much, because when I finish work, I'm training or I'm cardioing or I'm food prepping or whatnot. For me, it was good that we'd had that conversation first, and said, look, this is probably going to happen. So just be prepared. And are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Before we went into it.
Yes. So setting
The
up
one
your
we were,
environment for success and setting up your social support. Yeah, that's really important.
absolutely.
And a lot of
And
people don't focus on that, right?
yeah, and I didn't realize how important that was until after the first prep.